Yeah, hello everyone. We're here to talk about for confidentiality, and what does that usually mean whenever information is kept confidential? I'm like talking about for private, for privacy matters and all that. And I'm sure most of us here, have heard that and knowing about it is toward, information that should be released and some information that should not be released. Of course, without the person's permission and all that. And let's just say that if it's information that's in regards to where that somebody that you might know and trust, or if there is any rule at all to where that why the information needs to be released to anybody who does request it. And a lot of times it sure seems that way, that whenever you do apply for a job, that it's like you might come up to those questions to where that information that if it's really up to you if it needs to be released, or if anybody asks to release it for any matters at all. But like anybody say that if especially if it's any personal relationship matters, or if it's family matters or anything like that, usually that stuff's kept pretty private. And like I say that, but still, that another reason to why that people might say that well, really, that whenever something is kept confidential, though, that usually that information that so far as if it's a survey, online survey, or any source of a testing, or post of completion of an assignment or something like that, something that you want to speak up about your own opinion about something like that, like especially like on a survey, that usually those are usually kept confidential. But still, though, that it's like, I know nowadays with this virtual learning stuff, it seems like that a lot of this stuff is either completed online, or over your smartphone or tablet or any source of device that you're using. And so that's why it seems like that a lot of times you're like, well, you don't really have to worry about anybody looking over your shoulder and looking at what you're writing about. So a lot of times it's like, you don't have to worry about any if there's like any desk around, if you're going to be going to an actual room to where you fill out any confidential paperwork or anything like that. You don't have to worry about any border walls or anything like that, or like any source of binders, or like anything that's going to be separating you compared you to the person that you're next to a lot of times. So it's like, if there's anything confidential that you are having to fill out, or answer any questions or anything like that. But a lot of times that everybody else might say too, that what's a good example of something confidential? And one of those, of course, could be maybe court papers. Like if you're talking to your attorney about something important, it could also be related to about something about your case, or something that really upsetted you, and you really want to talk privately to somebody about something. So it's like, that so a lot of times it sure seems that way, to where that when we're talking about confidential papers, that we're also talking about extra security measures. And I know like programs like Adobe Acrobat, and then also that like Word document that you can share files to individuals that say that for read only, and you can set the file to where those personnel, those who received the document and able to read and modify the document, and they say this to where like read only, and then for kept confidential. So it's like, whenever you do fill out an application, though, but still, there are some information, like anybody say too, that some information that it's up to you if you want to share it, if you want to talk about it, maybe to the group of people. I'm like, for therapy, or if you're going to be in this counseling class or something like that, anything that you want to talk about, anything that you want to share. But what does it usually mean whenever you do keep stuff confidential? And a lot of times it sure seems that way, that there's like it's another way of how to say, it's like a rule to where that any information about to where that it's basically another right about speak up about your opinion about how what comes to your mind, and anything that you agree with or disagree with. It's a lot of things about the terms of service and everything. So a lot of those surveys, and a lot other training materials that you would more likely see something like that, something that's confidential. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that whenever we say confidential, though, that like anybody think is toward it, that that does not mean that oh, okay, well, it's lost. Well, the files are there, but yeah, that they ask people that nope, if you do not have that person's permission to open up that file of paperwork, then you don't have access to it. So it's like, so yeah, there are some things that you can keep private and confidential, but a lot of times it sure seems that way, that that there are some places that might ask you to release the information at least once, or if anything, like for for a review, and so that's why it sure seems that way, that whenever we look at a document, though, it's like you read through a document and thinking as to where that yeah, that anything that is kept confidential for that reason. And what I mean by confidential, it's another way of stating to where it should be kept private. And private letter, it could also be related to court papers. It could also be related to anything else about if you want to post a comment about something. And that's usually what I see too, that whenever you do fill out a questionnaire or something like that, an online survey, that you want to speak up about something, and usually that places like tax offices, places like that, that they'll ask you to complete a survey for what you thought about how well that we handle your information. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that that there are some things that you do that maybe you should keep confidential, that you should keep private, and not everybody should you should always request to have access to it, just to make extra copies or anything like that. So I know that like anybody probably thinking too, is to where if we're talking about maybe the grade book or something like that. But like if we're talking about like medical papers or anything like that, senior citizen medical papers or anything like that, that like they say, is to where for sure that you would need to get the permission of that patient, of the individual, before that she could you'll be able to release that information. And for sure that people, somebody out there who could be just concerned and curious about what the situation, what was going on and all that, but still that half the time it sure seems that way, that when we talk about confidentiality, though, that not every question deserves an answer. And so it seems like that whenever somebody asks politely about something, then that person's going to tell you that well, I can't tell you that, it's confidential. Oh no, I can't release that information. So it seems like a lot of times that whenever you have conversations with somebody, that they're going to tell you that no, I can't tell you that, that's that's against the rule. And so a lot of times that whenever you do have conversations, that there is some information that just can't be released. And so it's like that so it seems like whenever you do start a conversation with somebody, that the first thing that you're going to maybe think is toward it, that there's a lot more than what could be provided, but they're just not telling you all the information. But a lot of times, why does that seem like the case, toward it? Maybe people get mad all the time about that, about confidential information. And if that's your job to keep it protected, and like anybody else will probably say too, that if you're going to be talking to an attorney, or if you're going to be talking to a doctor, that there's information that you cannot release to somebody who asks for it, and who asks to get the information from them. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that whenever you're talking, whenever you start a conversation about something, it's like that there are some things that can be released, and some information about something. And so it's like that when somebody asks a question, that it's like, well, really, if you cannot provide the information, and at least to say that, well, that is confidential, I cannot release it to you at this time, or I can't release it, period. it's against the rule of the records, and so that's why it sure seems that way to where that the conversation to the meeting, like if you're going to be in a meeting and the conversations you wind up starting up into this argument of the matter. They could also start into a little back and forth discussion about if you cannot release that information, and well, I'm going to be setting pressure points as to where, well, if you can't release the information, and well, I don't see why not. I'm giving you, I'm like, yeah, start direct orders, especially direct orders, and I know that a lot of times the case usually is toward it. You may have seen it, like on a lot of these, during these meetings, though, that people that cannot release information, or if they say that they just, this personnel just doesn't know the answer to the question. But a lot of times it sure seems that way that whenever we talk about confidential information, though, that are we necessarily thinking about information that happened, about something that happened due to an accident? And let's just say if it is due to an accident, that a lot of the information, quite a bit of it would probably be kept confidential. But let's just say, though, that with anything, confidential, though, that I say, I'm like, what does that pretty much mean? Well, it needs to be handled properly. That there's only about maybe 3 people who are licensed professionals who can look over that paperwork, and knowing that going by the legal matters and all that. And so that's why it sure seems that way that that whenever we think about confidential documents, that with this digital stuff, like with this with all the virtual connections and everything nowadays, half the time it sure seems that way that keeping your information protected, especially, and if we all know exactly how that works, is that it sure seems that way that whenever you're going to be connected on your smartphone or on your tablet, that you can keep a lot of your information private, from other people. People, you don't have to worry about people monitoring your devices all the time and looking over what you're looking at, and if anything that you could be hiding that you shouldn't be hiding, stuff like that. And so that's why it sure seems that way that information, and people might think too that really, if that's up to you, if you want to talk about your journal, you could talk about your journal or your diary, but still, that there are some things that you should really just keep private. And I could probably say too that I don't know if everybody would probably say too that if the doctors were to ask you something like, okay, about the tooth fairy, or if it's the Easter bunny, or if it's imaginary friend, or anything like that, any personal matters or anything like that. But I tell you one thing, that whenever it comes to confidentiality, though, that it's like you start a conversation with somebody, and you want to start talking about your early childhood about something, and people might say is to where, well, really, that there's really nothing that you really need to know about my early childhood, other than you had a rough 5 or 10 years of a childhood, just because of the situations that went on, and some things that were going on during your early childhood that maybe that you would like to talk a little bit about them, and maybe you don't want to talk about them, and maybe nightmares, bad dreams and nightmares that you've had about rough childhood or anything like that. So there's a lot of good examples of what we call confidentiality. But it sure seems that way that doctors and maybe counselors and social workers would ask the questions, just because if you're going to be in a conference room with them and they're going to tell you, well, it's just you and I talking, and if you could explain to me about what comes to your mind when we think about this. And so that's why it sure seems that way that really it's all about feeling more confident in this person that you're talking to about the problem, though. It's like, really, that if they're willing to help you out, and if you're willing to trust them on taking care of certain matters. And so, yeah, that, if it's abuse or anything like that, So I guess that's one of the reasons why that a lot of the programs and a lot of the skill, like a lot of the software programs that exist nowadays about how to keep your information private and to where that people that only you choose can read it, and only people that you can trust that can look at that information right there. So it's like, yeah, if there's a rule about that to where that everybody has their right to speak up about something, keep information safe and private, and so that's why it sure seems that way to where anything that you're mad about, that you want to go and write about it, and then if you want to just think out loud, and anybody that you feel comfortable sharing with, but still that there is some information that you probably don't feel very comfortable at all sharing or releasing to anybody else, and that somebody else is going to need to understand too. And you're probably thinking that a number of times that if we've had a meeting, and even if we're going to maybe be in court or anything like that, any jury duty, or if it's maybe any source of parents hearing or anything like that, anything to do with maybe that the health orders or anything like that, that there is going to be information that it says toward, just because that person asked for it doesn't mean that you have to pressure them and then to provide that information, because for sure it's possible that person that you're talking to may have some of the knowledge and some of the answers, but they may not have any of the copies. If you want a copy of something, or if you want to have more information about the documents released, then yeah, you go to that. You can request for that information, but like almost all the time that whenever we had meetings about stuff like that, and people are going to be pressuring you about, okay, well, how come you can't give me a reasonable answer? Well, I asked you a simple question. I need a yes or no answer right here. So a lot of times it's like that whenever we're talking about something, and let's just say right here that I talk about, about, first day on the job, and then also learning about, the basic skills about, filling out the application. Also, what I learned, from the past 4 weeks right here. And so this is just like a little journal writing right here, something that I wrote. Talking to somebody, tell them about my experience right here. But still, that we all know that documents that would be related to maybe due to an accident, or maybe due to maybe a contractor. There was a contractor that had to write something, or maybe investigate something, or for any papers at all that are related to, maybe if it's if it's a loans, or if it's maybe property damage, or claim investments or anything like that, accounting, you name it, that information that is provided, that some of that information that should be kept confidential. And so like I say, is that there ain't nothing wrong with saying it's confidential, and it's private, and that means is that keep it out of the hands of the wrong individuals, and to know about how to handle it from there. But anyway, I just want to let everybody know that there are some things that you would like to talk in privately about, and like anybody say, if especially maybe if it is a relationship, or possibly that being having to leave a job, or being escorted out of the building or anything like that, that you would probably like to say that just to be able to just to be able to release all the anxiety, to talk about the problems and all that. And they would say is toward that information should be confidential. And so that's why it's like, yeah, well, that there are some information, like I say, is that some information, and people may say that, yeah, well, can you really talk to that person into talking about, talk about whatever they want, from what they can remember and what they want to talk about, such and such. But I just really think, though, that that information that should be kept confidential, and like anybody would probably say too, a number of times it's happened, that the system that we have nowadays, to where that really, you don't really have to worry about anybody opening up that binder and looking through any personal information or anything like that, because a lot of it, sent electronically, through, from a safe folder. So it's like, yeah, a safe and secure folder. You'll use in a special, secure system, and so yeah, so stuff to go from there. But anyway, different ways of how you want to describe your confidentiality, for what it means, and let's say information that information for how it needs to be handled and all that. But everybody else will probably say too that whenever you're talking about something confidential, though, that's information that should only be reviewed by the person who really needs to know about that case, or if anything, no more than 3 people like who are working the case. And so yeah, and I know that does that information, is that information, a lot of times almost everybody else might say that that information may be released about maybe every 5 years. So let's just say if there's any confirmation, if there's any confidential information that can be released every 5 years, and let's just say if it's been 5 years, and really, if it's anything private, if that can also be released. But some might say, well, really, that if it's really all about the decisions or the vote between for who requests the information or anything like that. But anyway, but talk about for confidential. It's like, really, if it's really your choice, to make that decision about the information that is shared. No, like a lot of times it seems like that, yeah, there's information that you should keep confidential, and people just need to respect that. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.